So our agenda today is, well, pretty much like every agenda we have. We'll do a brief welcome from the various board members. We'll have our update from Chief McCulley if he's online, or Tom will give that to us. And then at 9:15, we have a neighborhood ready panel discussion. And I think I'm really looking forward to that because we're going to hear from the experiences of those in our neighborhood who have actually done these trainings, et cetera. So it's going to be a great thing, I think. And then, of course, at the end, we'll close up with regular business stuff and entertain any questions before we start off for the day. So at this point, we'll go ahead and, start us off with some welcome and introductions. Jeannie?
Yeah, thanks all for joining. I'm going to have the rest of our board introduce themselves in a moment. I just wanted to call out all of our area coordinators and say thank you for being on the call if you are on, and just even if you're not, we appreciate your stepping up and being a volunteer for the different areas of Atherton, and wanted to remind everyone about our mission, that we're here to partner with the Atherton Police, but also make sure that our neighbors and ourselves are resilient and safe and taken care of in a disaster or a pandemic or any other type of issue, even an earthquake. So we're here to enable and arm you guys with your own knowledge to then carry that on with other people. So I won't read off all the area coordinators, but I see we've got a few on, like we have Omid is on, and Joan and Jan and Mary Lou, and I'm missing some people, Tom. So thank you so much to all of you guys, and I'll pass it off to Norma.
Thanks, Jeannie. Good morning, everyone. I have some bittersweet news for everyone. So I've been given a moment to share it and to bring you all up to speed. Today is my last meeting as an A.D.A.P.T board member. It was back in April of 2013 that my husband and I moved into Atherton. And I remember very vividly my first A.D.A.P.T meeting. And I met Tom and Scott, and I thought, these guys are amazing. And there were only a handful of other people there. It was at the Atherton Town Council chambers. But I reflected back and I thought, I want to know what these guys know. Scott was one of the co-founders of A.D.A.P.T, a very sage individual. I don't think he's on today. And then, of course, Tom. The good fortune that I had in meeting you, Tom, and learning all the things that I needed to know, and I'm still learning, so I guess I didn't learn them all. I really appreciate you for that. And I also wanted to do a shout out to the other board members, to Colleen and Jeannie and now Rebecca. You guys have been amazing to work with. If more boards function like the A.D.A.P.T board, nonprofits would really go a lot further. So I want to thank you. And I don't think that the chief is on, but I have to say that the chief's support, his partnership, his leadership takes this organization to a whole new level. And we're really fortunate to have that. And I think lastly, I want to thank all the fabulous area coordinators that I have worked with since 2013 and say to all of you, stay the A.D.A.P.T course. It is the only wise choice out there for preparation, and help us raise the A.D.A.P.T bar. Keep training, educating, and preparing. And lastly, be the leaders. You know, there are many people who aren't attending our meetings and they're not educating themselves and they're not preparing. So you need to inspire them. And you do already, and there's more people to enroll. We have about half of Atherton connected to us, and the next wave will be connecting the other half of Atherton. So I just want to say thank you for 7 gratifying years of being an adapter. And I'm going to continue to attend these meetings from Santa Rosa and set up an ADAPT-like organization with my community up there. And thank you all. I will miss being involved.
Thank you, Norma. You've made an enormous difference. Just speaking as one of your co-workers in this endeavor, you are leaving a huge hole. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Thank you, guys.
Rebecca.
Hi. Yeah, I'm actually a little teary-eyed after hearing that. Norma, we're all really going to miss you. But for those who don't know me, I'm Rebecca Grant. I'm the newest A.D.A.P.T board member. I'm thrilled to be a part of this amazing team. I was first introduced to A.D.A.P.T about a year ago when I had the pleasure of attending a neighborhood ready session, actually. And I met Tom Pressing. And as Norma said, it's a life-changing thing to have Tom Pressing come into your life. And I've just really been intrigued and curious and interested in what I could do to help get that message out there. And so I'm so excited to be doing that in Atherton. Atherton is a unique place, the town, the community, the area coordinators, the block coordinators. It's an exciting place to be. And I just want to help fulfill the mission that Jeannie talked about, get that preparedness message out there. My background is in technology and communications, but not for the sake of technology's sake. I really like to use technology to reach more people. As Norma said, the other half. So, you know, if there were to be a disaster, we think about our neighbors, we think about the ones that may not be in the loop. And those are the people that we can reach now. So I really want to help with that part of the mission. And I guess that's about it. My email address is adaptdirector2@gmail.com. I would encourage anyone to reach out to me if you ever want to chat about anything or just so I can meet you. And I'm just happy to be part of the team. And Norma will really miss you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca, and welcome. We are very, very pleased that you can join us. Tom, want to give us a little bit of idea what today is about and what you might know from the chief.
Good morning, all, and welcome to our August 4th, or our August meeting. It's August 1st. Norma, first of all, sayonara. I know you'll most likely, you and Earl will set up an A.D.A.P. North for us at Santa Rosa. And, you know, who knows, maybe we can, over the long distance, some of us A.D.A.Pters can present a get ready for your Santa Rosa community. So that might be fun. I want to thank the board in general. We have gone through a lot of challenges this past year, and we've adapted quite well. We brought on a new board member, as you know, Rebecca, who's going to make a great difference. Norma, changing her A.D.A.P. Address doesn't change her input into our community. And since she's going to be joining us once a month, her energy will be there, so will her presence. So Norma, I'm glad you're staying with us. We'll just call it A.D.A.P. North. A couple things. I see the chief is not on. Chief, are you on? Because I sent him a text and a email, but so he's not on. So a couple updates. Since we last met, there's been an uptick in COVID incidences in Atherton from 13 to 27. So what that means is we were able to stabilize at 13 the entire 81 days we were in deployment throughout the community. So the chief deployed us and we did a really great job. There've been 14 new cases since we last met, which means that we all have to continue to be vigilant. Even though we don't have a formal deployment going on, our area coordinators, block coordinators, and neighborhood coordinators still need to have a an awareness of what's going on, encourage our neighbors to, outreach to the community through A.D.A.P.T, making sure they're okay. So far, there have been no reported deaths in Atherton, and that's a good thing. Again, but just be aware, we're going through a second cycle of this, and then just do what you've done before. Make sure you're social distancing, wearing your masks, and having your proper equipment at home. But two other things real quick. Be aware of canopy fires. Have your evacuation plan in place. Have your go bag ready to put in your car. So far, we're crossing our fingers. There haven't been that many major fires in California. We're crossing our fingers there, but that's still an issue. Cross our fingers again. We have the brownout issue. We talked about that last meeting about what to have available in case you have a brownout. So far, so good, but be prepared to provide auxiliary power to your security systems, to your medical systems, and your basic life systems, and then have alternate lighting. And then we will continue to, Colleen is doing an unbelievable job of creating videos, A.D.A.P.T videos that will be available shortly, and we will continue to do the Get Ready programs over Zoom to any community or neighborhood that wants to have that. So just let us know, and we will provide that. We already have a good program in place. And again, Norma, Godspeed.
All right, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. Well, since that also includes the updates from the chief, we're going to move right into our program for today. And we have a neighborhood ready panel. So let me just switch gears here on my own computer. Our neighborhood ready panel today, I'd like to thank, Elizabeth Lewis, Erica Frolicker, Maria Amundsen. These ladies have joined us to talk about their experience. They have been through this before. So you'll remember from last month's meeting, Tom outlined the basics of neighborhood ready for us. First, you look after yourself and your family to see to all of their needs. And then once everything is good in your area, you reach out to your immediate neighbors and make sure they're still doing well or get their needs taken care of. If everything's copacetic at that point, then you proceed to the EAP, and you'll start to look after your neighbors in your entire area at that point. So before we get too far into this, ladies, could you please introduce yourselves? And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here so that we can see you as you talk. Can you just tell us why you're involved with A.D.A.P.T and what area you're in, please?
Would you like me to start?
Yes, that's great, Maria. Thank you.
Sure thing. So I'm Maria Amundsen. I live in Menlo Park, actually, but it's surrounded on 3 sides by Atherton because I live in the Felton Gables neighborhood. And it was about 2 years ago. I'm now the emergency coordinator for Felton Gables. We have 113 homes and about 300 plus inhabitants, and we have 16 block captains now. And we had none of this a year and a half ago when I went to my first A.D.A.P.T meeting. So I feel like I'm just going to be preaching to the choir today because I've learned so much from all of you. Pretty much everything we've done at the guidance of A.D.A.P.T, and Tom and Norma was enormously helpful at the beginning, providing us with all kinds of information, which we cribbed and shared with our neighbors. And I was invited into the homes of Wally Sleeth and Jan McKenzie, who walked me through all of their preparedness and what they were doing. I had ideas for our event from Zach. So, so thank you all for having me here today. And I'm happy to share what we've done.
Thank you. Other panelists.
I guess I'm next, I guess, since I'm here in the United States. And my partner, Erica Freulicher, she's in Austria right now. She's right now on the screen below, and if you can see that on your screens too. I'm Elizabeth Lewis, and I wanted to say that I'm, as you all know, I'm not the mayor, vice mayor of Atherton. I'm also known as Elizabeth too. I used to live in Atherton in Area 6, and now I live in Sandhill Circle in Menlo Park, which is Area 27. About 7 years ago, I moved to California from Connecticut, and I knew about hurricanes and blizzards, but I didn't know about floods and earthquakes and fires, and I wanted to learn more. And that's why I got involved with A.D.A.P.T. Scott Barnum was very helpful in outlining what the roles were for different positions, and he was very supportive throughout that process. I wanted to get involved with both areas, Area 6 in Atherton and also Area 27 here in Sandhill Circle, because they were not organized at all. And I felt that there was a need to help the community get prepared for an emergency. Erica, what would you want to say something too? You want to add anything to?
Yeah, I'm Erika Fröhlicher. I've lived in Menlo Park since '91, and I live on Sandhill Circle, which is the same circle that Elizabeth lives on. And but I've been commuting up to UCSF for over 30 years, and when I retired, I went overseas. And the circle is structured in such a way that everybody enters from the circle to their garage doors into their homes, and they leave through their garage door with their cars to go wherever they're going. And so what I've noticed is that I've never lived in any community that was as private as the Sandhill Circle. And there were also very few kids here when I first moved here. And I got the property over a weekend when I came up from relocated from LA, and then noticed that it was pretty much mostly senior residents here. Anyhow, that didn't matter because I commuted all the time. But over time, I felt sort of sad that I didn't know my neighbors. And one saw no one ever walking outside. And then what changed that, three things: Elizabeth, Tom, the A.D.A.P.T. meetings, because Elizabeth just invited me to an area that I had known had these kinds of progressive ideas. And also, I think the great thing about it is that I think the mentorship by Elizabeth, she just sort of approached me, and my little dog, I have to add that, because my little dog and I walk on the circle, that's sort of mandatory for him. And so I would meet Elizabeth and she'd chat with me. And she sort of asked me, what do we have got going here? And I said, nothing at all. We used to have a little bit of a system that was in the pool area, but now there's nothing. Everybody's on his own. And she just chatted with me. She didn't pressure me. She didn't say do this, that, or the other. She just invited me to A.D.A.P.T. And when I saw the energy and enthusiasm, I really was ready to think about getting involved. And then I'll follow up then a little bit later. So that's sort of what got me involved. And it's been extremely rewarding, I would say.
Very good. Well, thank you, ladies. And thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate that. Let's start out with the first question for Tom. How would you explain or define neighborhood ready to someone who isn't familiar with the emergency preparedness language? Oh, is Tom on there?
Yes, I just
There you are.
undid my mute. Thank you, Colleen. In a disaster, and primarily we focus on earthquakes, but as you know, in Atherton, we have other things like canopy fires and gas explosions and falling trees and others. But in terms of neighborhood ready, we train up to the most critical event, which would be an earthquake. And as we discussed last week, in Get Ready, which is that first part of you taking care of yourself and your family, making sure they're secure, making sure your property is secure. Neighborhood ready is that next step where you venture out and you work with your neighbors to provide a 7-day survival experience. In one sense, it's like, I call it a large camp out. a disaster burning man, learning how to work with the resources you have in a large neighborhood to maintain a 7-day sheltering, so that when the first responders do show up, you are in a very good place to be able to assist them or have them assist you. And Neighborhood Ready is a step-by-step checklist of how to go about to organize your neighborhood after you have secured your home. That checklist is available, I believe, on the website. I hope to do another in-depth review of that later this year, so that after you've secured your family, you go help secure all the neighbors. And in a survival situation, it's common knowledge that it's a group that allows you to survive and thrive in a disaster. Individuals can do it, but it's much more difficult. So Neighborhood Ready gives you the skill sets and the mindset to do just that.
Great, thank you very much. So panelists, this one is for you, and of course, Tom as well. You've been really successful, Felton Gables, et cetera, in different areas. How do you get people in your community or your smaller area involved in this kind of training? What does that take? What kind of effort on your part?
I can go first again.
Sounds great.
I would say the #1 thing that mattered in getting neighbors who were not initially that interested involved is the buildup. And Tom walked us through every step of that, but it started with just sort of introducing the fact that we have an emergency preparedness operation. We're trying to get it off the ground. We got some great materials from Norma and other places, and we distributed them to every doorway. We had a block captain do a 1-to-1 meeting with as many people as we could, just to encourage them to get their supplies together, be thinking about emergencies, sign up for alerts. And then Tom led a Get Ready. And I think that was essential to the success of the Neighborhood Ready, because we had 40 people show up for that. It was a lively session. Tom made it, really interesting and fun, but also hugely informative. And I think people realized, oh wow, there's a lot to learn here, and I like learning it. So by the time we announced that we were going to do a Neighborhood Ready, which was 5 months after the Get Ready, we already had a pretty good level of enthusiasm, and we had allowed time for people to talk to each other about, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. I think I might go spend the morning at that. And then the 2 little tricks that I learned, also meeting with Tom and others of you, were the make it fun. So ours was an ice cream social, and we also invited the fire department to bring a truck at the end, because it's been really hard in our neighborhood to get the young families. The older retirees are usually the first ones to show up, or the only ones to show up at the meeting. The young families who are busy on their weekends, it's a lot harder. So that was the ice cream and the fire truck were to entice them, and that really worked. That's
great. Elizabeth, what has been your experience?
Okay, well, it took a number of steps, and I'll go through them, what seemed to work here in this community. There's a large, as Eric said, there's a large number of retired people here too as well. There's a homeowners association here that's very active, and Eric and I wrote a proposal that we wanted to organize the community, and the homeowners association was very supportive of that. The president of the homeowners association wrote a letter or information, an article in the newsletter and about emergency preparedness. And he also introduced Erica and I to the community, and that we were going to be going around organizing for emergency preparedness. So he set the stage for our knocking on people's doors. I wrote a script, and we had business cards with our names, and we had handouts. All this basically, I should mention this too, it stems from a lot of my experience with A.D.A.P.T. and the work that I did in Area 6, organizing that community too. So it was sort of like taking that foundation and applying it to another area, which is different. Every place obviously is unique. We asked also neighbors to fill out forms, what information they'd like to share with other neighbors too, in case of an emergency. We also thought of having a holiday party so neighbors could meet each other, those neighbors that were interested in emergency preparedness. And we had a large turnout. We had about 38 people. And after socializing at our party, we had actually a meeting where the people in our neighborhood introduced themselves and they exchanged information about their skills and resources that would be helpful in an emergency. I went over some basic points of information about emergency preparedness too. But everybody at the meeting really wanted to learn more, and they were interested in having a get ready session. Preparedness presentation. So basically, as I recall, Eric can add more to this too, perhaps, is that Eric and I did most of the work of organizing the Get Ready meeting. We emailed people. We actually at the meeting got people's emails, and when we had gone obviously around door to door, we got people's emails. So that was helpful. The president of the Homeowners Association wrote an article in the newsletter about the presentation that Tom was going to be giving, and we handed out flyers all over the neighborhood. We had 2 sessions. Tom was very generous, and he did agree to do 2 back-to-back sessions because there were so many people and the room was small that we had to have 2 sessions.
Wow.
We had about 43 people attend. We were very pleased with the outcome.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's a sizable amount. Erica, did you want to add? I think you're on mute.
Thank you.
There you are.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
There are a couple of things I would want to add that may be relevant to some communities and not others. The president of our Homeowners Association is a retired physician, so he was very interested in this activity and in supporting us. He also advised us how to go about with the board, and it was his advice that we go as volunteers because the board has a lot of official legal concerns. I think he sort of wanted to indirectly say he didn't want us to get bogged down. And if we stayed independent as volunteers, Elizabeth and I just continuing what we were doing, that we wouldn't be, if you will, encumbered by a lot of legalese. However, he was equally as supportive in putting things in the newsletters. There's one cartoon that was just hilarious about being emergency prepared that he selected to put in and so on. So we have about 99 units. And at the beginning, this all started last year, end of summer. The first meeting was around Christmas. And we were asked to comment on good or bad. And the thing is, in the beginning, I felt very intimidated knocking on doors, even though I was a nurse in the past, have a public health background, and very comfortable talking with people because of the feeling of that people are so private in our area. I was more nervous than would ordinarily be under any circumstance to go and knock on doors. And my concern about violating someone's privacy was so great. So this is where the mentorship of Elizabeth was important. Sort of like knock on all they can possibly say is, no, I'm not interested. And a few of them in the beginning sort of just said hello, barely opened the door. That was very discouraging. But having Elizabeth's mentorship and support, I just continued on. And we also she has a motto of don't come empty-handed. So we always handed something out that was informative, like the FEMA pamphlet and so forth. So that was another aspect that I think people appreciated having in their hand. And now, less than a year later, out of the 99 units, I think we're probably about 70 covered, and a few of them are not occupied. So a very high percent.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Now, Rebecca, our newest board member, is not technically on the panel, but Rebecca, do you want to chime in? Because I know you've also participated in the Neighborhood Ready efforts.
Yeah, we had a session and a process similar to what's been described by Maria and Erica and Elizabeth. And we have 90 homes. We started with a survey. We were able to get kind of an initial sense of what our demographic was so that Tom could cater the presentation to the types of folks in our community and what their concerns were and how prepared they were. And that survey was enormously helpful. We had just started organizing our group coordinators, and they were the ones responsible for getting as much participation as they could on the survey. And so, like Erica was saying, it was a lot of door-to-door finessing, and most people were very receptive, very happy to meet their neighbors. And that information was really helpful for making sure the session itself was really targeted, and that the people left with a feeling of, oh, my specific question was addressed. I was able to get my goals achieved. So I think the survey was really helpful. And Tom, of course, made it all happen well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Pauline, may I do a follow-up to Rebecca?
Absolutely. Please do.
Thanks to Rebecca and Nili Gaffney, who's another key member of that community. We created an enormous amount of energy in the presentations we gave up there. And we're going to have a drill, a neighborhood drill, in April. And then obviously COVID came. Good news is that we're going to do something really radical. I just got off had an hour and a half Zoom yesterday. We are actually going to conduct a Zoom drill with all 6 areas of the Sharon Oaks Association. And it's going to be quite a radical undertaking, but it's all going to happen over Zoom. We're going to have communications. We're going to have incidences. It's going to be quite an adventure. So thanks to Rebecca and Nili and that community. The energy was so strong that they have pushed us and me to have a drill anyway, and it'll be in a Zoom format, and we'll be inviting other folks to join us.
Fantastic. It's nice to know we can keep going, even in, I hate it when the journalists all say these unprecedented times. It's getting old. But I'm really glad that we're able to go ahead and adapt to our changing circumstances, which I guess is what we do, right? Adapt.
I'm totally excited about it because it's going to be quite unique, but I think we're going to be able to pull it off, and we're going to use the model that Maria established with her neighborhood drill, which she'll delineate in a moment. We're using that model for the Sharon Oaks online drill.
Very good, very good. So here's another question. If I was going to try this in my area, what would you say? What are the cautionary tales you would say? What are the biggest challenges that you faced in creating and organizing this event for your neighbors? Maria, you want to start us off again? And we seem to be in a rotation.
Sure, happy to do that. So I mentioned earlier that getting the young families in, there's sort of two sides of our neighborhood, which are the older retirees, and then this lots of young families, and many of them with both parents working and very busy weekends. So getting their attention, getting them to provide their own supplies for their home or whatever was one thing, but getting them to show up for a neighborhood ready drill was another. So I talked that over with Tom, and yes, the ice cream social and the fire truck helped, but we didn't want them to just show up at the end for the ice cream in the truck. So what we did was we got 2 of them. We rounded up 2 of the families and asked them to create, as we would in a real emergency, a place for the kids. And we wanted them to set aside, it was basically a front yard next to where we were going to be holding the drill. And we put the 2 mothers in charge of figuring out, what do you want to do for whatever kids show up? And they came up with the idea of having some snacks around and some games to play and some, just various easy front yard type of games and books and things. And they said that they would basically host anyone who wanted to drop off their kid in order to do the drill. And so by putting that information out, it was a chance not only for the parents to have a break while they could still see their kids. Their kids were going to be in the front yard next to where we were. So they weren't far away, and it allowed the kids to get to know some other kids that maybe they hadn't played with before. And that was a challenge. and it worked really well. We had probably half of the 40-something people that came had kids. So there were at least, 20 kids running around, 22 kids running around this front yard of all ages. And, they end up helping each other out as well as the two moms who were there. But it was a lifelike kind of situation. And it ended up being a good way to handle that challenge.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Elizabeth.
I thought, and it'll be interesting to see what Erica, because we've not talked about this. One of the biggest challenges that we had was to find a place that was big enough we thought we'd get a lot of people because interest had been expressed at our holiday party. And so we didn't have a place to have it. There is an office building that's connected. It's in the interior part of the circle. And there is a room that's is available for meetings, but it only houses 20 some odd people. And we thought there was going to be more. So the problem came as to what we were going to do about, having maybe 2 sessions. And I was personally against it because I thought the sense of community, everybody should be together. And that was one of the goals we have, is that people would meet each other in the community and get to know each other. But I was incorrect about that. Erica was very astute, and she'll be happy to hear that. I'm very sorry that I was against it. We had 2 sessions. And it worked out just fine. And not everybody got to meet each other, but it still worked out in a very productive manner anyway.
Very good. Erica, what would you like to add to that story? You're on
well,
mute.
I'm not on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We have children, and on our circle, not that many, probably not 20, but quite a few. And we don't have any neighborhood thing. In fact, it came up at one of the board meetings that could we have a little park or a little play area? And that was voted out because of a variety of reasons that some of us weren't happy about, even those of us who don't have children, because it would be nice to have the sounds of children around. But I think ordinarily we have a summer pool party, which is out this year, and also the pool is closely monitored because of the situation. But I think for next year, I would imagine that we could have a pool party, and that would bring again children and families out, maybe not as many of the seniors. And maybe we could actually, from what I've heard others speak about, maybe we could have something for seniors that is more geared towards seniors, just like Tom gears his talks towards, do you have your glasses, your medication, your hearing aid, having something that's more tailored to seniors, and then have something separate, maybe a pool party or something for children. So I think I'm acquiring ideas here because we really no grass whatsoever.
That's
And
wonderful.
Colleen,
Yes, Tom.
to follow up again with Sharon's circle, we began planning a drill, and because there was no specific area, we were just going to take over one of the areas called the circle and make that our ICP, and then radiate out, and we would create scenarios with a couple of the condos and a number of streets and whatever. Obviously, COVID got in the way, but each neighborhood drill is catered and designed by me to fit that community. So Felton Gables has a totally different environment than Sharon Oaks or Sand Hill Circle. But that model fits all of them. And so for example, in Sand Hill Circle, it was going to, the epicenter was going to be the circle itself. So again, one of the things after we're done with this meeting is I will reach out to Erica and Elizabeth to see, after we pull off the successful Sharon Oaks Zoom drill, to see if we can't do at Sand Hill Circle, we'll do a drill but over Zoom, so that we can address the issues that Erica brought up, address the children, the older generation, and still have a drill, even though it's not going to be outside.
Very good. Rebecca, did you want to add anything?
I will echo the same sentiments that finding room for the people was a challenge we hadn't expected. We have a fairly large clubhouse that fits 80, 90 people, and we were at capacity. So we thought, oh, we'll offer free food and then people will come. Well, they came in droves. and
Wow.
they stayed, and they were just riveted by the presentation. So so finding a space was a challenge. The other challenge was kind of overcoming. I liked what Tom said, the skill set and the mindset. There was a mindset that emergency preparedness is about buying your own supplies. And if the community is going to work on preparedness, that means the community is going to buy enough supplies for everyone. That was kind of the mindset going in. And that was instantly changed when we participated in the session, because Tom's method is so interactive and so thought-provoking. It really got people thinking about how they might solve problems and what kind of scenarios would come up. So going in, I would say that was a challenge, but that was immediately resolved as soon as Tom started the session.
Very good. Thank you. So I'm hearing a theme here from a few of you that, you know, Tom is really the central guy. And I realize, Tom, you do most of the, I would say, the exercise planning, not the neighborhood coordination planning, but you do all of the, well, for a better word, the drill stuff, right? So talk to us about your work in preparing these neighborhood readies. Is it really bifurcated where the neighborhood does neighborhood stuff and you do your stuff, or is it more of a combined joint effort? How does the planning actually work if someone wanted to do this in their area?
Thank you, Colleen. So if you visualize those little Russian dolls where a doll sits inside of a doll, and so it sits inside another doll. When I started all of this training, I wanted to make sure that all the training fit into the next level training. So get ready is you and your family. I've now created a new class called Family Ready, which is a family drill, where multiple families at the same time can actually go through the physical aspect of what we talk about intellectually in the Get Ready presentation, and multiple families would be doing it at the same time. So you'd get together a cluster of families and they'd all do it, and then they'd meet in the center and talk about how they did it. Then that there was nothing between Get Ready and the big drills that I ran in East Palo Alto, Atherton, and Menlo Park. Many of you have attended those. Those are massive drills. So at our last Atherton drill, we had 131 participants, firefighters, police, EMTs, and multiple communities from as far north as South City and as far south as Mountain View. But there was nothing in between. So that's when I came up with the idea of the neighborhood drill, which was modeled after the community drill, but was absolutely neighborhood centric. So you had to know the neighborhood, know the environment, that kind of thing. And so what I do is I got together with Maria and she said, we'd like to do it. And so we sat down, we talked about the neighborhood, we decided what block we were going to use, where we're going to have all the disasters happen. We decided the time frame. We decided how we wanted to go through the setup, setting up communications, setting up reconnaissance, setting up the medical tent, medical operations. And we did those aspects of the community drill the same way, or the neighborhood drill, the same way we do it in the community drill. So that if you participate in the neighborhood drill, you could do the community drill. And if you did the community drill, you could bring it right back to your neighborhood, because they fit into each other. It was a lot of planning. And then we got together our teams. We had two preparatory meetings where I outlined how the drill was going to happen and in what order, so that it was a learning experience rather than just, out of the clear blue sky, giving them some skill sets in advance, sharing with them, here is the best practices about how going about doing it, creating all the little fun things like flyers and identifiers on victims and signs on, fences that said, this house is burned down, what are you going to do, etc. And then we had those two meetings, and then thanks to Maria Amundsen and her fantastic team, they showed up and They just executed it because I had given them a plan, the neighborhood ready checklist, and they followed the checklist.
Mhm.
And so the first person that showed up was the leader. The second person was the scribe. They had their checklist and they started to fill out the teams, set up their communications network, set out the reconnaissance teams, and then do the medical operations, which is all we wanted to do to make sure that that was solid. And then we had the presentation by the fire department. Engine 6 showed up, and then we and had a conversation, and they made a little presentation, and then we had our ice cream social and our after drill review. And that's the basic components. There's a lot of preparation going on by the community leadership and then by me to actually design the drill to fit the environment and the culture of that neighborhood.
Very good. Very good. So, panelists, do any of you wish to reflect on the planning efforts? Okay.
I'm covered it very well.
All right. Very
Yeah,
good.
I'll follow up again. We are going to have a Sharon Oaks drill. It'll be by Zoom. It will have the same components as the regular neighborhood drill, except it'll all happen over Zoom, but there'll still be communications. And I'll be able to report back, and so will Rebecca, about how successful that is and how we can adapt it in this kind of environment. Although I am very excited to get back to doing it live. I'm exploring with Menlo School for the use of an auditorium, whereby we would do a live drill in an auditorium space with masks, where I can recreate a neighborhood environment inside an auditorium, maintaining a relative social distancing with masks, so that you get a little bit of a live flavor. So we're exploring that as well. But hopefully we can get a lull in this COVID so we can find a location to do a live drill. I'm looking forward to that.
Very good. All right, here's a question for all of you again. What were some of the learnings that you came upon? What was the good stuff that you learned? What was the bad stuff that you learned? Any words of wisdom? I'm sorry?
Okay, I'll pick it up. I think the main good learning is that we can do this. You know, we had no certs in our neighborhood. There's not a single ham operator. There wasn't a ham radio. No one other than me and maybe one other block captains had even done a community drill. So you're taking a lot of very inexperienced people, and we did it. You know, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty at all times. There was definitely some chaos at the beginning because not everyone went to the planning meetings. The block captains went to the planning meetings, but not everybody who attended the drill went to the 2 prior planning meetings, nor could we expect them to, because it's just too much time to ask of people. But but we learned that we could do it, and we did it. And so the sense of community, the sense of sort of fun and accomplishing that, and the sense of confidence just has lasted and lasted. It still lasts, you know, and this was more than a year ago now. So that was a huge learning. Just getting to just doing something, just gathering people and doing something was huge. I would say the other thing we learned that was really valuable and led us down another project path was that while we do want everybody to be prepared and everybody's working on their own individual preparedness, there are some things as a community that would be really, really nice to have. Like we didn't think about charging any devices that might need to be charged or lighting things or security in any of our areas. We hadn't really put our heads together on that until we were in the actuality standing in our street where we would be in an earthquake and realizing, oh, it would be really nice to have this or that. So we actually did a fundraiser after that. We asked every home to contribute $75, and the $75 was voluntary basis, and they could give more or less. And from that, we bought 3 Honda generators. We bought gas cans for each. We brought canopies and chairs and folding tables to go under the canopies, 1 for each of our 3 entrances off of Encinal. So they could be set up not only as access points for our 300 plus people, but also security for entrances. And we got some LED scoping lights so that we could light up those entrances at night. And then we got a number of other handy things, some chains and locks for the generators. And, you know, we raised it close to $6,000, which we didn't have. I mean, there was just no fund for anything like that. So that was a huge learning, that we could get organized around some supplies and that we would have to maintain them. So I'm not suggesting that everybody run out and do a fundraiser and buy things until you know how you're going to keep them going. Who's going to be checking those generators, or are you going to leave the gas out of them? You know, where's the backup oil going to be? Who's willing to house these things? So there's planning, but that was a big learning, and we all feel a lot better having accomplished that and knowing that we have the supplies as a neighborhood as well as the individual supplies, if that makes sense.
Very good. Elizabeth.
I want to say that's really very impressive. It's giving me lots of ideas what we can do in the circle. I think in terms of what I took away in terms of being positive is, as Erica mentioned, this circle, people didn't really know each other. Mm-hmm. And people were very isolated. And I think I've taken away that most people are interested in learning about emergency preparedness. I was frankly really surprised that I thought it was pretty easy getting a number of people interested. Once we presented information about preparedness, they were very receptive to it. So that was a surprise to me. And also, there was also a need, I think, inherently, that people do want to know neighbors and be part of a neighborhood. So many people have said to me, and I think to Erica, that they're so grateful that they know who's living next door to them. And now when you walk down the street, people say hello to each other. One neighbor even volunteered to do Zumba lessons for free, and we're all Zooming outside. And there's a real sense of community. Some things that I would be that I was worried about or concerned about, bad lessons, or I learned, I think I was overly concerned about having 2 meetings. Mm-hmm. And I would say that was not important, and it wasn't perfect, but it got the job done. And that's part of a learning process, is that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Erica, would you like to add?
Yes, I would like to add 2 things. Just as soon as Elizabeth and I felt, oh, we have got these volunteer block coordinators, and we had some for 700, 600, 500, 400. The other half of the circle, they are different homeowners association, and we are going to talk to them in terms of whether they want to complete the circle, and it's smaller than ours. But just as soon as we felt we had connected with many neighbors and that we had block coordinators who were so enthusiastic and willing to help out, a lot of things are happening. And so you can't just rest on your laurels. Like, people moved, quite a surprising number of people have moved in our area, and people have operations and this and that and the other. So it's well worth to have more block coordinators rather than fewer, so that we have coverage. For example, I'm gone and 2 in my block were gone, so we are a little bit short there should we have an emergency. So those were the things that I think was really important. And then the other thing is the confidentiality with regard to phone numbers and addresses. And we asked whether they had pets and whether they had any special needs. And I think that became valuable during the COVID time, because a number of those neighbors I called personally and said, did they need anything? And Elizabeth called another group, and there were people who volunteered to go shopping and do those things. And I think knowing who is living by themselves and knowing who, for example, a couple of people, there are women there where the man is quite heavy and who could not manage a person to go anywhere if there was a catastrophe. And knowing that, I think is a very, very valuable piece of information at a time of an emergency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. Rebecca, any thoughts to add?
The only thing that I think we kind of struggled with was communications, as far as how often to reach out. we were very active. The group itself and the group coordinators had a lot of dialoguing, a lot of emails, and it was kind of questionable how much of that our residents were interested in. So we didn't want to overwhelm people with information and meetings. So we had to kind of find the right balance, and it turned out that every group was a little bit different. So we left that up to the group coordinators, and that's worked out pretty well.
Very good. All right, we're coming to the end of our time for this session. So I wanted to invite Tom to give us any last words of wisdom on this topic.
My last words of wisdom are the following, is that the preparation we are doing, which tends to be earthquake centric, and the progression of learning the get ready concept and that skill set and that confidence with you and your family, and then hopefully we'll be able to do the family ready. We've done at least one drill in Felton Gables, and we're about to do another one in Sharon Oaks. And then moving up even to the larger community experience of drilling is a process of developing confidence by practice and confidence by knowledge. But what is more important is that even during COVID, especially during COVID, is each of us has to continue to reach out to our neighbors. Fortunately for us in Atherton, we were deployed for 81 days by the chief of police. So we had a very, very active outreach program that was spectacular. And one of only 3 in the entire Northern California, Palo Alto and Morgan Hill being the other 2. So I encourage those of you in the other areas is keep your communications going, even though we don't have maybe a get ready class just yet or a neighborhood ready drill. I'll be more than happy to do a get ready again for any of the communities. They will be tailored again to your community. We'll do them over Zoom, and that gives you the added opportunity to keep people interested. That's the key. Once you get them excited, then we have to keep them interested. Here in Atherton, we have a fairly robust group now, and that 81-day deployment really helped. So again, I'll reach out to Marie in Felton Gables, Sand Hill Circle, and Sharon Oaks, and other places. Like I'm going to be doing a get ready on my drive called the Marcusson. We're called the Marcusson Rebel Alliance. So we're going to be doing that here. I encourage you to talk to your neighbors, and I'll be more than happy to do a session. And as Erica and Elizabeth pointed out, I am comfortable doing 2 sessions. Matter of fact, I did 2 sessions for Park Forest. So we had 12 and 12 because people couldn't make the morning or the afternoon. So we did it on a Sunday, and I had 12 Sunday morning and 12 Sunday afternoon. So I'm more than amenable to doing multiple sessions because it's important for me, and I believe for you, that we are ready to handle anything that's coming down. Who would have ever thought we would have this kind of flu? But we were ready.
Yeah.
The earthquake training made us ready. So bravo. Again, I'd like to remind folks, be prepared for brownouts, which is primarily auxiliary power and lighting, and keep your COVID awareness up because it's still around. And those of you in Atherton or in areas of Menlo Park that have the canopy issue, make sure your go bags in place, make sure your evacuation planning is solid and has been reviewed by your family. And don't wait. If it looks like there's a canopy fire, get in your car and get out. My final words of wisdom.
Very good.
May I add one point that I didn't mention earlier that came from Tom when he did the neighborhood ready things. When he did the neighborhood ready thing, he asked people, which neighbor would you call if you had an emergency? And there were quite a number of people there who didn't have anyone. And I think that experiences of thinking about what if something happened now, and then at that time we shared information of I would call you or you could call me kind of thing. And I think that really got people up to speed in terms of how important it is.
Very good. Well, Thank you. I just shifted back in. I wanted to thank all of our panelists, Elizabeth Lewis, Erica Frolicker, Maria Amundsen, and inadvertent panelist, Rebecca Grant. Thank you all for what you do, and I appreciate that. So if we could have a nice Zoom round of applause for our panelists, please.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Before
Colleen.
we move on to our next item, I just want to ask a question, and this is something that we're going to try that's a little bit new. We can't really do a poll because we're not set up to do a poll. So if you look at the bottom of your screen where you see the participants 38, if you click on that, you will see a list of participants suddenly comes up on the right hand of your screen. So you can see everyone who's here. At the bottom, you'll see that there's these little symbols. There's a blue hand that's sticking up. What I'd like to do is, I see Tom Owens hit his already. So that hand, I'm gonna do a little raise your hand poll, if you don't mind. And my question for you is, these neighborhood ready events are, I think, really powerful events for people. And we have a few pioneers here who have gone forth and done this, but it's a little intimidating. So my question for all of you is, what if we set up, I don't know if you've seen those in the game aisles at the stores, those murder mystery in a box, where you take the box home and you have a dinner party and everyone plays along with the mystery and people are assigned roles. Well, what if we set up a neighborhood ready in a box? If we were to put together a neighborhood ready box and we use the collective wisdom of our people, you know, here's how you plan it. Here's the first steps. How many meetings do you need? How do you get people interested? Do you have to go door to door? Sort of like a little cheat sheet of how you do this. How do you plan the events that you're going to have? Are you going to have, you know, a sign with a house on fire? But basically you open this box and you follow the steps and suddenly your planning is all set for you. So what I'd like to ask you all is if you could raise your hand if potentially, this isn't a commitment, we're not going to say, oh, you raised your hand, so you have to have one. But would this inspire you to have one of these events? So raise your hand if you think you might consider it.
I can't find the raise your hand part right now. Where is it?
On the bottom of your screen, if you click on participants,
yes,
it will bring up a menu on the right, which has some little icons at the very bottom.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. So it looks like there is some interest out there.
Yeah, wow, this is great.
Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to gauge your interest is because if the board works on putting this together and we enlist our panelists to help, you know, advise us on this, we don't want to put in all that work if everyone's going to say, a great job on that. I'm glad you did it, but I'm not going to do it. So thank you for, you know, the raised hands. Down, by the way, or doing anything to, you know, but it's good to know that you might be interested. All right, so we'll finish up our meeting then, since we're a little over time with our hitch. Jeannie, volunteer information.
Yeah, I think with Norma's departure, you know, more than ever, we need, well, we don't need, but we would welcome your help. As Colleen said last month, if you see something that A.D.A.P.T should be doing, it might be your calling and your time to help make that happen for us and for the community and the communities that are, you know, residing near us, like Felton Gables and Menlo Park and all of that. So we're just very thankful for people who want to participate in drills. That's a way to volunteer, right? Just becoming more engaged, but then also helping out Rebecca with technology ideas, anything in between. We welcome your help and feedback, solution-oriented feedback.
Excellent. That brings us to the treasurer's report. I was just trying to pull up my my bank app here. What I would like to say is that we have some very generous people in our community, and I do not have the names in front of me, but we have had some more donations. So I just wanted to thank you all for thinking of us and keeping us going. We'll, of course, be accountable to you for the use of all of those funds. It's not my rainy day vacation fund. Besides which, you can know that we can't go anywhere anyway. So thank you for that. Please continue to use things like Amazon Smile. Those funds keep trickling in, which is pretty darn cool. It may be because all of us are home shopping more than we normally are. So let's put that to use for the greater good. Also, I wanted to mention that when a donation is made, the board does try to acknowledge you as quickly as possible to make sure that you know, that we know that you've given a gift, but also we make it with all of the 501c3 information so that you can use this for tax purposes as well. So we try to get those out right away. If you have given this year and you've not received one, and you've given, you know, earlier than say a month ago, let me know, because you should have already been receiving those letters. Last up is normally a wrap up by Tom, and Tom is back on. Tom, do you want to wrap us on up?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So guess what? We just adapted. We just had an internet earthquake, which knocked us offline, and look how rapidly we recovered. 21 people got back online within about a minute. Now, you may go, well, how big a deal is that? That's actually a very big deal. It shows that your mindset is already to recover, to get back online as quick as possible, rather than, okay, maybe I'll just call it a day. So that's very encouraging to have this kind of interruption and have 21 people get right back online. That's our mindset. That's why A.D.A.P.T is so successful. We're learning skills, we're getting confident, we're spreading the word. And in terms of spreading the word, if you really are interested to join our board, please talk to Jeannie and Colleen and Rebecca and myself, and we can certainly use that additional enthusiasm and skill set to make this Atherton community experience something that affects our neighbors all around us, all the way up the hill to Sand Hill Circle and Sharon Oaks and Felton Gables. And I personally want to thank all of you for the incredible efforts that you put in, especially during COVID. And again, Norma, God bless you, Godspeed, and you and Earl have a great time up at Verona. And that's my final words.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our meeting to an end, unless there are any questions, concerns, or issues.
Joan, we've got a question from Joan.
Joan, what's up?
You have to unmute there.
Okay, so I didn't get to hear your question because of the loss of the internet. So what was the question?
The question was, if we put together a box kit that had all of the instructions, here's how you start the planning, there's a checklist, here's how you throw a neighborhood ready. Perfect.
Good idea.
So I'm not going to, again, I'm not taking names or anything. This is no commitment. It's just an expression of interest. So I know I should be putting the work into it. So I'll get this going and we'll see what we can do for you. Any other questions?
I'm excited about that, drill in a box. That's cool.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really cool, and it'll make it much more accessible, because right now, without any backup, it's a pretty intimidating event to think about. So maybe we'll see if we can do, maybe radio drills in a box or whatever you can think of. We can pack it up into a kit and make it easy for you to do, and we'll get us all together. Any other thoughts, concerns? Right.
Yeah, I think it'd be a very good training tool for the Black coordinators too. And it could be fun. I think I really want to support it a lot. I think it's a great idea.
Excellent, because I'll be calling you.
I like the idea a lot.
Great. Well, thank you.
It could even be a fundraiser. You never know eventually.
That's right. That's right. Any other comments?
Yeah, Colleen, two things. One, I have an idea of murder box. In fact, I have an old one that I bought like 20 years ago. I never put on the party. I'd be happy to help beta test. This is the first one you put out. See if it works. And
Great.
we had a problem a few weeks ago, so I just want to help the rest of the A.D.A.P.T people. Our burglar alarm is on low battery, so we called our burglar alarm people, and teams went by.
Elizabeth, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm having a little trouble hearing you, and I'm not sure if others are as well.
No, we can't hear her.
Oh, did I unmute or demute or?
No, it sounds like you're.
I'm not muted.
You might have something over your microphone.
I don't even know where it is.
You're good now. You're good now.
Bottom of
We
your
can
phone.
hear you now.
Can
We
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I just did want to point out that we did manage to order the batteries ourselves. We got the wires, we changed the wires. It turned out the battery was corroded. So it might be one of the things to put on your checkup list is to be sure to check up your replacement batteries.
Yes, that's
and have one on hand, because I don't think we'll be able to get them over the web like we did. Plus the wires to support them and know how to trim wire, how to put it up.
right. Great advice. I'll be tapping you too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I believe this brings us to the end of our meeting. If there are no further comments, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you next month.